And we're going to be looking particularly, or Cara's going to be taking you through some of the lessons that we found from some of the work much of the work we've done over the last couple of years, really, which is broadly around student casework. So looking at things like extenuating circumstances, appeals, complaints, misconduct, and student discipline. So why, so I suppose that we've done lots of work in this area. We're continually being asked to do work in this area and share lessons and comparative and best practice from across the sector. So it's an area universities are continuously looking to make improvements in this area, and with new regulation and so forth, we'll find that we'll expect that this demand for assistance in this area is likely to increase. So today we're going to discuss with you the benefits of reviewing these processes, sharing some of the best practice amongst yourselves. So we're going to have a very interactive session, really looking at making a better connection between all of that student casework, those core academic business processes, with student experiences, and what process and data can tell you about your students and what they need, and sort of interrogation of that can help you. So ultimately, it's making the case for student casework, which Cara is about to do. So you're spending a lot of money in these processes, and are you really exploring their potential? Cara.
Thank you, Helen. So hello everyone, my name's Cara Attenborough. I've been at SUMS for about a year now, but I'm almost at my first decade in higher education. I've been at the Open University beforehand and King's College London in a variety of roles, always had kind of student in the title somewhere, thinking about student experience, student journey. So talking of roles, there's lots of hats in the room today, lots of you with different kind of roles. So regardless, hopefully you're going to be able to take something away from this session. And this slide just begins with, here's maybe a starter for 10, a question that you might be asking yourself if you're in a particular role. So if you are kind of heavily involved in academic registry and these services, what changes might you be able to make to elevate the status of student casework in your university? If you're in the IT digital transformation space, are student case management tools on your technology roadmap? Have you scoped requirements for them? If you're in kind of strategy and planning, project work, what other core business processes might be related here, where the ideas actually are transferable to lots of different areas? How can you connect the dots for how all of this links together? Maybe people in operating, finance roles, for you, a question there about what reporting and KPIs might we need here? What data do we have? What do we need to understand how all of this is working for our institution? And then we've got SUMS colleagues in the room as well. So for you, I suppose, thinking about our learnings from student casework, where else might we be able to apply some of the things I'm going to share today? But before we do all of that, I'm going to precariously take us over to Mentimeter. Precarious because I'm hotspotting off my phone, the internet isn't working, we'll see how we go. So I'm going to bring up Mentimeter, hopefully, and if I'm not, I'm going to seamlessly just switch to my browser. Always good to have a backup plan. Just for some audience participation, please. So if you have a phone handy, there we go. Are we going to play almost? Okay, here we are. So you've got a couple of options. If you do have your phone and the camera's excellent, you can scan the QR code for me. If you've got a laptop or you just want to open a browser, you can go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and then there's an 8-digit code there for you to put in, 4179-6699. Now, as I move through, the QR code is going to disappear, but the instructions for the browser are always at the top of your screen if you lose me at any point. You'll know you're with me, you should have a green arrow and it will say you're all set, ready for me to move on. So let's see if that happens. So first question for you all.
Everyone got it okay?
Yeah, okay, so if you know about the processes at your university, so extenuating circumstances, appeals, complaints, student discipline, academic misconduct, what are the main issues or pain points that your university has in this area? So if you know, these can submit multiple comments, short sentences, maybe even single words. What's going on? Volume. Yeah, number one, lots and lots and lots of EC claims. And then when students are submitting appeals, what they're often submitting appeals about is actually retrospective ECs coming through. Volume, 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 accurate records is an issue, handover between schools and the centre, poor technology experience, responsiveness, maybe because of volume, manual processes, disjointed, not within a structured solution, devolved institution joining the dots, an involved process, lots of people touching it perhaps at different points, lots of things going on in this area of student casework. Thank you. Moving us on. Next question, single choice. I'm being mean, one choice. Which statement best describes your university's position on these processes? If you had to choose one of these, is your university clear on how these processes contribute to your strategic ambitions and what you want for the student experience? Is actually staff awareness and what they prioritise just really sporadic? It depends how close they are to the work. Do they just happen in the background? They're just something that happens at our university. Maybe you just don't have any position at all, something else, or maybe you're just not close enough to this work and actually you don't know, you're not confident enough to say. But we kind of are all kind of collectively hovering around that middle one. We kind of, well, if you're close to it, you know, and if you're not close to it, maybe you don't know, actually, you don't understand what's going on there. But we have got one person who's actually really clear actually on how all of this work aligns. So hopefully that's where more of us can get to. Next question. So maybe it's not you, but maybe it's your colleagues. How much does your university know about the time staff spend on cases? So the hours they might spend on making a decision, investigating something, what proportion of their role is it? And I've given you three options here, so three different sorts of staff. Academic staff directly supporting cases, so that might be people who are attending appeals panels, maybe they're investigating academic misconduct. Professional services staff, they're the ones triaging cases, helping to make decisions perhaps. And then you've got lots of staff indirectly supporting this work. So the ones who are on student services help desks, who have the students coming and saying, excuse me, can I have an update on my case, please? All of those staff. Where is our sense in the room of the time that all of these different colleagues are spending? You've kind of got options. I wonder if, can I bring up the scale? Scale isn't coming up, but on the left we have a kind of no idea, and on the right we've got full idea, totally know how much time my institution is spending on these issues. So actually we've kind of maybe got most sense of what PS staff are doing in this space, less of a sense of where our academic colleagues are spending time, and really limited awareness of actually how many different staff across the institution who aren't directly involved, the time that they're spending. Okay, another single choice. Does your university know how much these processes cost? So if we think about, well, I know the staff involved and I know the time they're taking and I know what salary they're all on, so I can add all that up together and I know how much these processes are costing me. Do you know? Okay, so we've got a few some ideas. Again, maybe if you've got a student casework team, you know what that FTE is, you perhaps know what the budget is there. But perhaps lots of people more on the side of no, don't know how much this work is costing us. Hopefully you can, I'm kind of leading you to kind of some case in points, I suppose, through these questions. Next one then. So this is about knowing our students. How far do you agree with the following statements? So for each one, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Our processes trigger interventions from other services. So an EC claim form comes in and it's immediately kind of flagged with a welfare team to follow up. Maybe your forms have certain risk words attached to them and they get put into a students at risk queue. Is that sort of stuff going on? Can you say that you analyze your data by student characteristics, UG, PG, international, other student demographics? Do you use that analysis to inform proactive interventions so you know who's perhaps overrepresented in your data, so you reach out to them for specific proactive support? And actually, do you understand how case data might also be related to other things going on in the university in terms of student continuation, progression, outcomes? So again, on the left, we've got strongly disagree, on the right, strongly agree. The mountains are kind of the spread in the room, and that number in the middle is the average. So we're kind of, yeah, maybe we're sort of understanding a bit of our data by characteristics. Some interventions are being triggered, but perhaps we're not as sophisticated as we could be overall in understanding how things can be triggering proactively. And that last one, connecting the dots, that bigger picture of terms of the student experience. Thank you for your contributions, everyone. I'm going to move us on. Okay, so slightly different question here. Thinking perhaps about staff well-being, maybe staff retention as part of staff well-being. How does your institution support staff dealing with difficult cases? So sometimes students will declare really quite difficult things in terms of extenuating circumstances they've had. Student discipline cases are often quite difficult. What measures do people have in place to support the staff managing those cases, if anything? Okay, thank you for your honesty. Badly. We don't really recognize this. Perhaps, again, if we think about, right, well, we don't even know who's involved and who's touching these cases and who's seen what, so how can you have a structured response to supporting your staff with this? Some people have a staff counselling service. Yes, greater focus on student support than staff support. Maybe that's fair enough. Nevertheless, especially because students are often trying to get a decision their own way, they might throw everything at an application for something, and you're reading quite hard things there sometimes. Support's limited, so again, I suppose making a case for this area of work and actually how maybe it's contributing to things in terms of how your university is managing money, managing staff turnover, all of that stuff is important here. One final question for you then. What innovative approaches has your university taken to make improvements to these processes? So a couple of answers there already. Struggling to get the basics right. And I suppose my argument here is perhaps actually these processes, these procedures have to exist. You know, they're things that you're always going to do. So it's part of your basic package for students. So how can you make improvements? CRM coming through there as an option. Sometimes these ones have a bit of a time lag. Let me just, forgive me, I'm just going to go back and forward and see if it makes a difference. Thank you for persevering. This is the last one.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is I've been, because the Wi-Fi is weak, so some of my responses.
Oh, it's a bit slow. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so things coming through for technology mostly, I suppose, in terms of CRM solutions. Not innovative, but have centralized activities. Sometimes that is innovative, actually, in terms of all of the work that's involved in getting everyone into the same place for how they do this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your engagement and persevering with the Wi-Fi. I will close this and seamlessly go back to my slides. I'm going to move all the way down to here. Okay, very good. Technology is just about on my side. So to talk you through what I've been doing in the last year. Firstly, a little bit of context. Firstly, the Office of the Independent Adjudicator, so handling complaints from students at English and Welsh institutions, has what it calls a good practice framework for a lot of the work in this area. Hands up who is aware of the OIA good practice framework and uses it. Okay, quite a few hands, good. So for lots of this work, the OIA has come up with a set of principles for how it thinks these processes should be working at universities. Accessible and clear, fair, independent, confidential. New for 2024, inclusive. So kind of thinking about where the sector's moving. New for 2024, flexible. So often students might have an appeal, they might have a complaint, there might be a fitness to practice issue. So the OIA is now saying to institutions, maybe instead of getting your students to go through 3 separate processes, you could help them kind of work out which one is going to be most relevant. Proportionate and timely coming in there, and then that link to the student experience. How can these processes be improving the student experience? Some data and some numbers. So each year, the OIA produces an annual report. So from 2023, of all the complaints it received, over 3,000 of them, 45% about academic appeals. And the majority of appeals, again, are previously undisclosed extenuating circumstances from students. But actually, when they are investigating complaints, 43% come out as not justified. So students are kind of pursuing this process, but ultimately maybe not receiving the outcome that they want. Nevertheless, there is money involved here. So total compensation from 2023, 1.2 million, up from just over £1 million the year before. Highest compensation there, £42,500 for a single student. And often I think what we see, what universities tell us is universities look to settle with students sometimes to try and avoid lengthy litigation processes. So maybe there's money out there that we're actually not seeing through these reports as well, I don't know. A different context, Office for Students. So from the 1st of August next year, there's a new condition of registration, E6, all to do with harassment and sexual misconduct. Universities really stepping up their game, or needing to in this area. So lots of different requirements here relating to policies and procedures. Big focus on, can you have it all in one place, please? A kind of single place where all of this information is there for students and staff. Whole lot of different stuff going on in terms of student casework, student discipline, especially in this case. What about my context? So in the last academic year, done several reviews with some member institutions, ultimately focused on process improvement, colleagues coming and saying, we've got a hell of a lot of cases here. Why and how can we improve that? At one institution, broadly looking at academic procedures, appeals, misconduct, and student discipline, they identified that Black students were overrepresented in their student data and wanted us to explore why, what was going on there. And actually, through one of my other reviews in their report, similar trend in data, Black students overrepresented, and sometimes international students and PGT students as well. So what's going on there? As part of work with another institution on student case management, went out to do sort of a benchmarking exercise, looked at how 6 different institutions structure their teams in this area in kind of 4 broad areas: people, process, technology, culture. So I'll share a learning from that. All of that obviously requires internal sector research as well. And I actually did have a conversation with OIA outreach and insight colleagues to say, here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Where are the gaps here? Where do we need to help our universities further? Ultimately, this has kind of led me to, I suppose, 3 main benefits, I think, for looking at this work, using this work to understand your institution. Like I said, they're not going anywhere. They're a core part of your business. So firstly, perhaps that basic starting point, identifying process improvements. So where can you save time in a process, save money, reduce the number of staff that are having to be involved in this work, reduce the risk of perhaps going beyond the time thresholds that the OIA states. So kind of basic benefits, I suppose, the ones that we're all used to, first of all. Second benefit, actually, there's data here. These processes, your data, is telling you something about your student experience. It's telling you what they're finding difficult. It's telling you whether certain parts of your student cohort are having a different experience to others. So there's data there to be had and to be understood, perhaps in a different way than we're used to. And for me, the link there is student satisfaction, student progression, student retention. If we understand our processes and we uncover that students are being passed from pillar to post to pillar to post to pillar to post, well, that's going to affect some sort of NSS metric, ultimately. Similarly with continuation, outcomes, if students aren't getting what they want, if the appeals process takes too long and they miss re-registering for an academic year, for example, all of that stuff is going on here. Finally, kind of a benefit, aligning things strategically. So how can we elevate the importance of these processes so that no matter where you are in the institution, you understand how important these are and what these processes tell you. How can you elevate the status to get that funding, to receive investment, to be on the technology roadmap and not have to kind of bang on the wall and ask, oh, please, can we have it too? There's stuff to do there, I think. So just a couple more slides from me and before we kind of open up the room to discuss, and would really welcome your feedback on anything that I'm sharing. What the reviews of especially extenuating circumstances and appeals have allowed me to do is come up with a structured approach to how universities can think about these processes. And actually, it's probably transferable to quite a lot of other processes as well. So 5 quite big structural elements that universities need to think about in terms of what are our guiding principles? What's guiding our work here? Do we care about student outcomes most, student well-being, regulatory compliance? Maybe that's a trick question. We have to care about all of it, but in which order? Student cohort, so mentioning who are our students, who's over or underrepresented in our data. Operating model, a few of you shared right at the start, that kind of move from perhaps being devolved to centralizing things. How are those decisions influencing your processes? Policy as standard. Some universities don't actually even have their policy written down, so kind of starting from the basics there. Systems, we've talked about CRM, student case management tools. And then more practical things down the bottom. So in terms of process, how many people are involved in your process? What's triage like? Could it be automated? Evidence, do we need evidence? Really, really hot topic in the sector. I don't think we'll ever solve that one. Decision makers, do we need academic staff to be making decisions about all of this stuff? Maybe not. How are they going to feel about that? We probably need their involvement at some point, though, if we're going to be mitigating for students, and that's an impact on then assessment and module progression. Guidance for students and staff always can be better and is perhaps not as good as it could be. Data, we've got data on volume. What else are we doing with data? So just to expand on a couple of these that I think we can kind of visualize as a spectrum. So for systems, maybe the spectrum or the main question to ask is, how manual is your process? Some people have Word documents and PDFs. Some have fully integrated inquiry forms, case forms in their CRM. Where is your institution? Where do you want to be? For process, it's that kind of sense of automation. What needs human eyes? What can we get the robots to do? If things come in and we know that they've met a certain threshold or by a certain deadline, can we just triage them automatically rather than have someone go in and double check? Evidence, for me, the spectrum there is actually, when are we not going to require students to submit evidence? So self-certification, but I know the University of the West of Scotland, for example, doesn't require evidence at all for any EC application. When are we going to accept the student's statement about what happened to them as enough evidence? That's what the OIA starts its section on evidence saying maybe we should just trust the students. And then when are we going to require third-party evidence from students? Or the more right you go, the longer the process takes, ultimately. Couple more spectrums, decision makers, so mentioned this one already. Professional services staff, maybe that's program administrators, maybe it's student progression teams who have relationships with these students and understand who they are and the outcomes that they're striving for. When do we need input from academic colleagues? In perhaps kind of, again, a spectrum of complexity there. And then data, this last one, are you counting volume? Are you understanding the trends? Are you tracking? Oh, Cara's had 3 applications in the last 6 months. What's going on there? Can we get someone to check in with her? So last week I was at the Academic Registrars Council conference and I asked the room if you could pick 3 of these kind of elements to work on. Where do you think for your institution there is most scope for improvement? So firstly, I was pleased that everything got a vote from some institutions. We all like to be unique, don't we? The top 3 though, number 1, systems. So 21 votes there from the room in terms of, actually we need systems on our side here. We can't keep drowning in Word documents that are then sent in emails with attachments. And then you think about GDPR in terms of all the evidence we're getting through those. Systems is definitely one to be thinking about. Linked to that, once we've got our systems, well, now we have data. Now everything is a row or a column on a spreadsheet. But what I was most pleased with, coming out at number 3 here, guidance. Guidance is maybe a quicker win. It's maybe a short-term thing. It's an opportunity to collaborate co-create with your students' unions. Often universities are getting their unions to produce the videos explaining this work. So for me, they're a great representation of long-term technological investment that's needed, but actually maybe we just need to be talking about this stuff in a different way with students. That's quicker to fix. A couple more slides then. So in terms of the benchmarking exercises we did on student casework teams, me and associate consultant Amy Bray came up with this model, a kind of maturity model for thinking about this work. So from a kind of individual, siloed, every service is different approach through to actually a bigger picture, holistic way of thinking about this work. We're aligned with our strategy. We're working with our students' union. We're being as proactive as possible about how this work relates to our student experience and the bigger kind of strategic aims of our institution. So a kind of way of kind of plotting again, where are we? Where do we want to be? And is there a kind of realistic middle ground as well? Final point then on here, magpies and rockets. Can we think about this work differently? So I suppose firstly to say, you don't have to be a magpie in this area. You don't have to look at the shiny, automated AI stuff. I mean, eventually, hopefully, we'll get there, but maybe actually just representing your process as a flowchart, thinking about that student guidance, maybe that's enough to kind of get you started, I suppose. Also, we don't have to be overly complicated. How simple can we make things? How fewer people can we get involved in these processes? And then my purple box there, I suppose, it's a question for me. I'm not sure I've got the answer yet, but really welcome kind of thoughts from the room. What if some of the solutions to these gnarly issues we keep thinking about as a sector, student belonging, satisfaction, retention, what if some of the solutions are in your existing processes? What if you can develop these processes in a way so that when a student does come to a help desk and they say, where's my case? That person can tell them because they see that person, Cara, I can see that your claim's being triaged and we're now at this stage of the process. Isn't that part of getting the basics right, actually? It's work that we're already doing. Maybe we just need to be doing it in a different